This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. You know you've entered the world of non-serious legal theory. When Donald Trump's own lawyers, in the brief they just filed with the D.C. Court of Appeals, cited as one of their leading precedent, one of their leading bases, the Grinch that stole Christmas, to oppose Jack Smith's attempt and the Special Counsel's office's attempt to put Donald Trump's own appeal on a fast track. In other words, Donald Trump doesn't want his own appeal as to whether he has immunity from suit, from prosecution in the D.C. election interference case scheduled to go to trial in March. He doesn't want the appellate court to decide that quickly. He doesn't want the American people to have the benefit, thumbs up or thumbs down, of whether he's a criminal or not in a trial. He wants to blow through the March trial date, get to the November election, hopefully pull off a miracle. It wouldn't be a miracle. It would be a nightmare victory, and reinstall himself as president. So he's doing everything he can to stop it, including citing the Grinch that stole Christmas. Let me break it down for you on this hot take. You know you're in trouble when you're an appellate lawyer for Donald Trump, in this case, John Sauer, and you start off in the very first paragraph of your brief by telling the appeals court that the reason that they shouldn't consider this on a full briefing, but on a fast track in order to not delay the March trial, because it is obvious that, quote, the prosecution has one goal in this case. This is page 1, paragraph 1. To unlawfully attempt to try, convict, and sentence President Trump before an election in which he's likely to defeat President Biden. This represents a blatant attempt to interfere with the 2024 election and disenfranchise the tens of millions of voters who support his candidacy. That's your lead as to why there shouldn't be a fast track, expedited appeal and briefing? Look, Jack Smith's not asking for them to cut corners at the appellate level. He's not saying dispense with briefing. Let's just have an oral argument. Let's have a hearing, and then you can decide. It's just there's going to be briefs, some of which are going to be required to be written over the holidays. And so at the end of, that's how they started the brief. At the end of their brief, which is supposed to be the second most important point. If you're drafting your brief for what we call recency and primacy, your first best argument, recency, your last argument, should resonate with the reader. This is what they want the appellate court to know about the rationale behind slowing things down. This is on page 13. The prosecution requests that the court require the defendant's opening brief be due no later than 10 days from entering the briefing order, which, assuming this court rules promptly on the motion to expedite, would make President Trump's opening brief due the day after Christmas. Gather round, boys and girls. We're going to get a Christmas tale now. Page 13 continues for Trump's brief. This proposed schedule would require attorneys and support staff to work round the clock through the holidays, inevitably disrupting family and travel plans. I'll stop now for everybody to do a collective awe. And the brief continues. It is as if the special counsel growled, now quoting from The Grinch That Stole Christmas, growled with his Grinch fingers, nervously drumming, I must find some way to keep Christmas from coming. But how? Citing, and I'm not making this up, and I'm gonna let us zoom in on this. Dr. Seuss, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Random House, 1957. That's your second best argument? Your first best argument is political prosecution, persecution. We can't go to trial. We've got a campaign to run. It's obvious that Biden's using the prosecution to defeat Donald Trump because they can't defeat him at the ballot box. How many times are we going to hear that tired old saw? The appellate court has had it. If this is what his best argument is, that it is an unconstitutional trial date. This is something they made up, by the way. They keep calling March 4th or the first week in March for the trial in D.C. an unconstitutional trial date. Why? They say, well, the prosecutors had 2 years to prepare their case. Right. It took 2 years to get all of the evidence of what happened on Jan 6th and what's contained in a 400-page Jan 6 committee report, plus all the witnesses and all the evidence. That's actually record speed. If you look at Watergate and Nixon, to get 2 years to get everything together for Donald Trump is record speed. They took 2 years, and there's so many pages. And you shouldn't now reward them by making us go really fast and over the holidays. Come on. That's your argument? as properly pointed out by Jack Smith, Donald Trump himself asked for a recent expedited fast track appeal on the gag order. I don't like the gag order. We got to go really quickly. We need a fast track appeal. So if it was good for the goose, why isn't it good for the gander? Why isn't the very issue as to whether an ex-president, while he was president, whether he committed treason and insurrection and obstruction of justice and attacked our democracy, why isn't that on the utmost importance to the general public before they vote in November? It is. And they cite to other cases like, well, it has to be special, strongly compelling circumstances. I gave him credit on page 2 of their brief when they properly pointed out the standard by quoting, "The court may expedite cases in which the public generally or in which persons not before the court have an unusual interest in prompt disposition." I'm like, okay, sounds like a former president being prosecuted for trying to topple democracy would be at the very upper echelon of an unusual interest in the public, don't you? Not to Donald Trump. He finishes that thought with, "Here, every relevant consideration calls for this appeal to proceed on a measured, deliberate schedule," meaning slow it down and let me get to my election, not the reckless rush to judgment advocated by the prosecution. What is reckless about it? And it's also insulting to the DC Court of Appeals. It's telling the DC Court of Appeals that you are going to make a rush decision on full briefing that has to be done over Christmas and an oral argument, presumably. And how could you possibly render your decision if you don't have many, many months in order to cogitate and ponder? They don't need to cogitate and ponder. They need to see the briefs prepared by the lawyers. There'll be 3 sets of briefs. There'll be 1 oral argument, and then they'll go review the case law and they'll write their opinion and they'll keep the case on track, just as Jack Smith said in his papers, because he pointed to the precedent of the Watergate days with Nixon, that they had to get a quick decision on immunity related to Nixon and to others because the Watergate trial hung in the balance. It's exactly what we have here. It's on all fours, as we like to say, in trial world and in court briefing world. That is the equivalent. That is the right comparator to what's going on here. They don't even address that case. They don't even talk about Watergate and the fact that there was an expedited briefing schedule by this very court in order to make sure that people in the executive branch went to trial on time. And that is the reason. Instead, they wasted their ink in putting in an actual citation to Dr. Seuss. That shows you how unserious, ill-prepared, and not credible the briefing is. And this is going to be so easy now when you compare Jack Smith's final brief, because the movant, the person that moves for expedited or moves for some relief from the appellate court, gets 2 bites at the apple, an opening brief and a reply brief. He's going to tear this to shreds. We're doing a hot take on it also here on the MeidasTouch Network. Dr. Seuss, you actually wasted 3 circuit court judges, appellate court judges' time referencing that Jack Smith is the Grinch. I saw reporting on this and I thought, no, he didn't actually say the Grinch, right? No, it's in there. So it starts with, just to summarize the 14 pages, it starts with, oh, Jack Smith's partisan and Joe Biden's making him be mean to us to scuttle the election results and give the election to Joe Biden. And it ends with the Grinch. And in between is a complete insulting section, insulting not only to the public that has to read it and legal analysts that have to report on it, but insulting to the judges that are reviewing it, because it suggests that they can't, unless they're plotting and ponderous and stretching things out to beyond the election, they can't render a coherent decision consistent with due process. Completely ridiculous, completely insulting, and as predicted here, will be rejected. Maybe they give them oral argument. They'll let this John Sauer stand up and defend, and maybe he'll wear a Grinch suit. Maybe he'll wear a Santa suit with a Grinch hat or a Grinch mask. Try that, John, because this isn't working. If this is the best you have, there's an old joke about putting a room full of monkeys together with typewriters and seeing if they can create Shakespeare. I I'd love to see the room that created this piece of you-know-what. So we'll continue to follow the filings and the rantings of Donald Trump and the musings of Donald Trump's lawyers as they make their way through apparently the Dr. Seuss catalog in all of their legal filings, because they have to plug some holes and they can't find cases to support their position. So when in doubt, sure, Dr. Seuss. We'll follow it on the MeidasTouch Network exclusively there, and on Legal AF, the leading podcast at the intersection of law, politics, and justice. We do the show on Wednesdays and Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Follow us there. 3 leaders of Legal AF, Karen Friedman, Nick Nifolo, and my co-founder, Ben Meiselas, and me, Michael Popok. Leave me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment here. It helps with the reviews. Follow us on Legal AF, and until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.